Getting Strange in X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And I believe we have some variety of news.
Finally, after me mistakenly hyping this a few times over the last few weeks on Twitter, the first part of our Patreon exclusive Let's Play of the X-Files FMV game is now live. That's purely at the moment for our Patreon members only, so you will have to subscribe. It's available at any tier though, so if you give us a bit of money, you can watch our Let's Play.
Hooray! As we hunt warehouses for tiny objects.
Yeah, we found it in the end.
We did find it in the end. Once we get to the end of it, we'll do a normal review of the experience, I think. Or judge it as an X-Files episode. Otherwise, I think there's some cons coming up as usual, but otherwise...
Yeah, I'm not sure if tickets for them are still available, but if you're in America, of course, there are the two events, the FileFest at the Mall of America and the Saratoga Springs 30th anniversary event. They're both coming up in September.
So go do that if you can, and send us over there if you want.
You're always willing to be sent over there.
Of course. So first up, we've got Nisei, directed by David Nutter and written by Chris Carter and Frank Spotnitz and Howard Gordon. And first broadcast on the 24th of November 1995. I think we've had a trio writing before now.
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think it's all been duos. Of significance in the guest stars, we have Stephen McHattie as the red-haired man, or the NSA operative, or that guy with the piano wire. Depending on how you want to refer to him. He's a red-haired man. You found out he actually had a name, didn't you?
Yeah, he does technically, and I believe canonically, have a name. It's never spoken in an episode, though. It is Malcolm Galak. Apparently, it's only mentioned on the DVD collection.
Terrible. As bad as Camo Man.
Well, you found out that Hispanic Man has a name, and I don't think I've ever caught that before.
No, that's true. I think that's because someone said, you can't do this anymore. And they said, crap. Oh, it gets revealed later. Anyway, Stephen McHattie as red-haired man. He's also been in, you'll like these, Beverly Hills Cop 3.
Oh.
And I just had to note this one down because I've never heard it before, but you can't see this and not mention it. Pterodactyl Woman from Beverly Hills.
I'm glad this exists in some form.
Aren't you just? I did read the synopsis very briefly. It sounds very peculiar. But he was in Basketball. He's the narrator.
Oh, right.
He's in The Fountain as one of the conquistadors. He's in Watchmen as Hollis Mason.
Of course he is, yeah.
Yeah. He's been in Deep Space Nine and he's been in Enterprise. But what we know him best for, aside from looking like Lance Henriksen a bit, is his turn on Seinfeld as Dr. Reston, where he appeared in 4 episodes while dating Elaine and giving psychiatric treatment to Kramer, before possibly being killed by Crazy Joe Davola. Also in the guest stars, aside from recurring people like the Lone Gunman, like FirstElder, like X, we have Robert Ito, who plays Dr. Taiko Ishimaru, aka Shirozama. He's been in Star Trek Next Generations, Star Trek Voyager, Batman animated series as Ninja or Kyodai Ken.
Okay.
He was on Gargoyles. He was in Avatar The Last Airbender. He was in Rollerball. But, of course, he's in Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension.
Oh, you skipped over Rollerball for that.
I said Rollerball first.
Yeah. You skimmed straight past the absolute pinnacle of excellence that is Rollerball to get to Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah, mostly because Buckaroo Banzai takes a while to read, and Rollerball is actually very quick to say. If Buckaroo Banzai was just called Buckaroo Banzai, it'd be so much easier. No, it's Buckaroo Banzai Across the 8th Dimension. But anyway, so those are our strange collection of guest stars for this week, aside from the returning people.
I guess it should be noted as well that this is the first part of a 2-parter, so
We're
going to talk about Nisei first, and then we're going to get on to 731.
Yes. In Knoxville, Tennessee, a train car is left in a rail yard. As it gets dark, a group of Japanese scientists enter the car and conduct an autopsy on an unseen body. The scene is being recorded and transmitted via satellite. Abruptly, a strike team of soldiers enters the car and kills all the scientists and takes the body they were operating on, who appears to be an alien corpse. Fox Mulder purchases a video of the autopsy and shows it to Dana Scully. who is initially skeptical of the tape's veracity until he shows her the ending as the soldiers storm the train car before the broadcast is cut out. The agents go to Allentown, Pennsylvania to track down the seller of the videotape and find him murdered. At the scene, they pursue and capture a Japanese man, who is revealed to be called Kazuo Sakurai, who is then revealed to be a high-ranking Japanese diplomat. Walter Skinner arrives and orders him released, but before doing so, Mulder does not hand in the man's briefcase, which contains a list of Mutual UFO Network members, satellite images of ship. The lone gunmen identify the ship as the Talapus, a salvage vessel from Virginia. Sakurai is then later killed by an assassin, who will be referred to as the red-haired man. While Mulder is investigating with the lone gunman, Scully investigates the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, group members. They immediately recognize Scully from her abduction experience in Season 2. Each has similar implants to Scully's and inform her that one of their members is dying of cancer and this will be an inevitable fate of all the women in the group. Meanwhile, Mulder goes to the shipyard and searches for the Talapus. He finds the ship, but while exploring it, armed men appear and scour the ship, but Mulder manages to escape. Later that night, he discovers a warehouse where an unseen object is being fumigated by a hazmat team. Mulder, of course, believes the object to be of alien origin recovered by the Talapus, instead of the gold bullion that is the official story. Skinner confronts Mulder over the briefcase, which Scully now has, which has caused an international incident with Japan. He says he will refuse to help Mulder with this case any further, and thus Mulder goes to meet Senator Richard Matheson, who gives him some details on the autopsy and links it to the larger conspiracy of the alien-human hybrids. Mulder discovers Japanese scientists were members of the notorious Unit 731 during World War II, like Victor Klemper, were recruited by the US government to further their own ends. Mulder believes the scientists killed in the videotape were working on a secret railway transporting test subjects. Scully takes her implant to the FBI labs to gather technological information about it. She also analyzes the autopsy tape and realizes that one of the scientists, Dr. Ishimaru, is familiar to her. Meanwhile, Mulder goes to West Virginia and tracks down another secret train car, watching a group of Japanese men place what seems to be an alien subject on board. A Japanese scientist, Shirazama, waits for the train at a station in Ohio. He is forced aboard after his bodyguard is killed by the red-haired man. Mulder chases the train to the Ohio station, but learns it has just left when he arrives. Scully returns home and encounters X, who warns her to keep Mulder from getting on the train. Scully calls Mulder, who has managed to drive ahead of the train and is about to jump on board. Despite Scully's pleas, Mulder jumps from the top of the bridge onto the train as it speeds below him. Some of this is really exciting, like jumping onto moving trains.
Yeah, it's probably our coolest, and it is actually David Duchovny doing that stunt as well. I understand that Duchovny was absolutely adamant that he was going to do the stunt because he thought it would be fun, so it took about 6 weeks for them just to train and prep and do this jump onto a moving train.
I think you noted that the train is moving incredibly slowly to facilitate this.
Well, yeah, it's one of those movie things, isn't it? As if a train's moving at full pelt, you're not going to be able to walk along the roof of it.
No, you're going to bounce off of it very quickly. So, we have more alien-human hybrids, apparently. Maybe. Although, it's very odd, because the start of the episode has what's very identifiably an alien body.
Yeah.
And what they put on the train in the hazmat suit near the end looks very different.
Oh, that's true.
They're not the same creature.
No, I guess your potential is one could be an actual alien and the other could be a hybrid.
It could be. Well, we'll get into that for 731, I think.
Or you've cast two separate actors, which indeed I know they did cast two separate actors, and that's why they look different.
But with completely different makeup jobs.
They're actually 11-year-old twins. The boy twin is the corpse at the start, and the girl twin is the one you see at the end.
So they put the heavy prosthesis on the boy and let the girl off with some Star Trek-style head ridges.
I think she gets to appear a bit more, though. You get more of her moving around, rather than just being a corpse on a table.
It's one of these things, though, where you look at the episode, you kind of think, you've just walked what we suppose is an alien out of a truck into a train car. Don't you normally put these things in containment units or something? This episode does feel a bit like bashing the Japanese bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. I guess it should possibly be noted, because I wasn't entirely aware of this, that Unit 731 or Nanasanishi were actually real in World War II, and I would have to put so many content warnings on this episode if I talked about them at length, you can easily find information on them online because what they did is vile. It is absolutely disgusting and inhuman.
So we're getting into a weird thing, because this is like Oubliette again, where the X-Files writers appear to just like poking things they probably shouldn't.
I guess over Oubliette you have the advantage of this took place in World War II, so a lot of time has passed. But it's akin of, you talk a lot about Joseph Mengele and the Nazi experiments on humans. Is 731 is horrible again. They reckon that about 500,000 people were killed directly by them because there were absolutely no survivors at their kind of camps. And also a further 400,000, I believe it was, mainly Chinese people, were killed as a result of their research, which was into biological warfare, amongst other things. I would recommend caution if you make my mistake and be curious and read up on this, because it's things you can't unread.
Yeah, so we'll leave that to one side for now.
But yeah, it is a horrible thing to touch upon. I mean, Dr. Shirozama is clearly supposed to be based on Dr. Shiroichi, who was the Japanese Surgeon General responsible for Unit 731.
And here he's got two different train cars. Is that him actually leaving at the start? So he sort of puts all the other scientists onto a train car, flees, and then the soldiers come in and kill everyone.
Yeah, when Scully recognises him in the video, that's him very, very timely escaping before they killed all the other Japanese scientists at the start.
Yeah, I think we've got some other stuff to go through Shirozama and part 2, but for part 1, the whole bringing the Japanese scientist does just come out of nowhere. We've had no forewarning for this element, have we? I do like that Mulder has bought another alien autopsy tape.
Yeah, for $29.95
plus shipping. And that this is contrasted inevitably with the one shown on Fox many years ago. As a lot of people remember that one at the alleged Roswell autopsy video at the time, of which there are notable a few spoofs. There was a comedy film about it, about the faking of it and everything. And people poring over the footage at the time.
It was real footage at the time. I can't remember the name of the person who produced it, but it was English made.
Yeah. And I think there were some anachronisms in it, so it couldn't possibly be from the 50s.
Mm.
And I think they did ultimately admitted it was a hoax in the end.
Yeah, it was very cleverly made by someone who was a filmmaker who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
But they very quickly figured out it was a hoax video.
It's Scully's dismissal of the whole you can't even see what they're doing is what kind of goes Mulder into believing it's more authentic, because it's not done for a cinematic purpose, is it? It's some surveillance footage. We do have to get into a bit of why were you recording this terrible angle of an autopsy?
It's a very good point. You can buy more that this guy's managed to hack into this by accident and find it, but the reason for it being recorded in the first place is never really given. Yeah,
recorded and broadcast, and he pulls it off the satellite at like 3 a.m. It does actually work, the whole thing of someone's found this by accident, he's selling tapes all through mail order. Given the X-Files universe, how he's lived long enough to get the tape to Mulder is a bit suspicious, because this is the kind of thing where you think the government would jump on him very quickly. Because they're only slow enough that he can have the tape get there just as we imagine the assassin has finished killing him. Like literal minutes with it. But I do like the fact that I can believe that Mulder has certainly been buying other alien autopsy tapes as they've come up in periodicals. We do have another weird reference to the fact he watches porn in the office, though. And that Scully might have walked in on him watching porn in the office.
I'd like to think this isn't even a 90s thing, but it makes me so uncomfortable, the fact that Mulder
has
this perversion, that Scully's aware of and Scully makes light of it, but it's evidently something she's been aware of him doing more than once.
Yeah, because this gave an Excelsis Day again, didn't it? Scully Shippers, we don't have to level with you. I understand the end game here, but Jesus, why does Scully want anything to do with this man?
In modern day offices and things, she would have called HR and raised a sexual harassment suit by now.
I would have thought in the 90s you'd be able to do that. To be fair, I don't think at any point in history it's okay to watch porn at work.
It's certainly in this day and age, it's something that I imagine even the FBI's HR would crack down on very quickly. I mean, I know in the office where I worked, if someone had been watching pornography on company time, they'd be out the door.
And it's the kind of thing where you could try and sweep away and say it's just a running joke they've got, but it's Excelsis Day again is the whole whatever tape you found on that machine this morning isn't mine. I put it with all the other tapes that aren't yours. oh my god, Mulder has a collection in the office. What are you doing, man?
It's certainly not a joke that's aged well.
No, go home. If you must do this, go to your apartment. Anyway, it gets the events moving and gets them off to this guy who's selling the videotapes, who lives in a weirdly dilapidated house.
It's just a MacGuffin to get the plot moving, though, really, because he's dead by the time they get there.
Yeah, and to be fair, what he wouldn't be able to tell you much except maybe the satellite frequency he pulled it off. Why it's going over the air and encrypted is another matter entirely, but, you know, well, we can clear that slide for getting the events moving. And we do get a bit of Mulder learning from experience, because when the diplomat attacks him and kicks his gun away, he immediately pulls another gun from an ankle holster.
I did like his little nod when he did that to the fact that Mulder seems to lose his gun an awful lot, and now he's got his countermeasure.
You've been doing a Japanese Duolingo for a while, and the Japanese guy does seem to be speaking authentic Japanese.
He is indeed, yep. Though you are going from my very beginner-level Duolingo course I've been doing since Christmas.
True, but we got the very insulting thing he mutters when he realises he can't escape.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he turns out to be a diplomat.
You do have the slightly odd thing with their dialogue, where the fact he has the conversation when Mulder's speaking to him in English and he is speaking back in Japanese, inferring that he does understand Mulder full well.
Yeah, although it seems to be he understands English but can't speak it, because I think one of his responses sounds an awful lot like, of course I can't, or something, or obviously I can't.
Yeah.
It seems to be, it's like, do you speak English? And I'm pretty sure he responds, what do you think, or something.
It's one of those odd things that you have in movie logic, though, where you understand the language but can't reply in it.
Yeah. And it's possibly something we're going to have to look up at some point, because diplomatic immunity comes up a few times in the X-Files, and I've got to wonder there's got to be limits to it.
I guess it's very vague here, is you could easily argue that this guy was there coincidentally or something. It's a long shot, but Mulder hasn't actually caught him standing over the guy with a smoking gun.
No, plus, nor has he identified himself as an FBI agent. He's just given pursuit to this guy. But yeah, the diplomatic immunity thing, I know it works to a point, but I imagine there's got to be limits to it.
I would assume so. I don't know how diplomatic immunity works. I presume it doesn't work on the basis of you can murder people with undue...
impunity,
with impunity, yeah.
Well, I'd like to think so anyway, otherwise you just make all your assassins diplomats.
It'd be so easy.
It would be so easy. Admittedly, though, whatever this assassin's been trying to do, well, obviously killing the guy who intercepted the tape, but then they kill him off, or it's not clear who Red-Headed Man is actually working for. Because he doesn't seem to be aligned with the Japanese, which is why he's killed the diplomat. But then he was being chauffeured from the embassy, so that implies there's some kind of cooperation, doesn't it?
It's true. You've got to kind of assume to a level that he's aligned to the syndicate in some way, just on the basis of how the X-Files has worked so far.
Yeah. That's probably fairest.
And he's also got the syndicate naming convention as the Red-Headed Man.
Yeah, all the time making Krychek really odd one out. It's like, come on, Krychek, when's your name? And what was Bill Mulder's? I want to know what Bill Mulder's name was. But more interesting is this weird reveal when Scully goes to see Betsy Hagopin, or tries to see Betsy Hagopin, and encounters a horde of women who recognise her on sight.
I love this scene. I think this is so great. It's so creepy, and just Scully's confusion and then realising, oh hell, there's a lot more to my experience than I thought.
Yeah, and it's the first time we've touched on it since Irresistible, isn't it?
I'd say so, yeah. Because the conspiracy episodes lately have just been about Mulder and Samantha.
Yeah. So, and the whole, they recognise each other from going to the Bright Place, where they work on us. And there's an ambiguity now, or feeding into the ambiguity that already existed in Ascension in one breath, of exactly who's doing this to her. Because they don't refer to them as aliens at all, do they? They explicitly refer to them as men or something.
Yeah, there's no indication from the conversation with the MUFON group that aliens are involved anymore. It's like we said at the time when I pointed out that it was a helicopter and not a spaceship, that these are actually people.
It was a very quiet helicopter.
I also like the little nod here to Red Museum, because the first thing that they say when they see Scully is she is one. And we don't mention Red Museum more than that, but it's such a nice little audio reference back.
It's a shame it doesn't actually quite hit home properly. Although, I think the problem there, and I can understand why you kind of fudge this detail, is their MUFON, who is the Mutual UFO Network. If they are convinced they've not been abducted by aliens, you're not really in a UFO network, are you?
It depends. We don't really get into how far this goes. I think you could still be part of the MUFON and think about this, because part of a lot of abductee experience is, of course, the Man in Black. So you have that hand-in-hand thing with the aliens that exist and the government cover it up.
That's true. We do have the interesting point that everyone has a chip.
And also the slightly ominous fact that they're all dying of cancer.
Yes, or at least they believe they're all dying because I think it's only Betsy is the only one who's actually suffering. Everyone else thinks it's inevitable.
Yeah, there's no indication of if there were anyone else before Betsy who has suffered in the same way, but they certainly believe, so I would assume they've got some evidence to believe this, that they are all going to come to the same fate of just multiple, inoperable, inexplicable tumours.
Yeah, and as far as we're aware, they've all got the same chip, but that's not clear.
Yeah, as you say, men performing tests is interesting. We seem to be moving away from, or at least offering a kind of interesting and a bit of a bleak alternate look to this, because if it's aliens that are abducting people and doing tests, it's scary, but it's whimsical as well. It's a lot more sinister thinking it's the same Japanese war criminals that were part of Unit 731 are actually abducting women and doing this.
Very true. Where it comes a bit unstuck in terms of how we've got to this point is we have whatever Mulder saw in Paperclip. Doesn't seem like Japanese origin to me. The ship. And Conduit. Did the Japanese come along with flamethrowers and torch all the tree line?
At the same time, for the counter-argument, of course, I agree with you. It's clear it's aliens that work in the X-Files. But if you want your counterpart from Scully's perspective, you're thinking along the lines of the two things aren't mutually exclusive. You've got
true.
Alien happenings, sure, we've got that, we can't prove them, but we've seen good evidence for them. And on the second hand, we've got whatever these shadowy governments are doing, because we know about Victor Klemper and the Operation Paperclip, the Nazi war criminals, that America is still researching what they began. And now you've got the Unit 731, which is the Japanese side of that, which again, the purpose of Unit 731 was to research how the body responds to different tortures and different things that could occur to it, as well as researching disease and how to make biological weapons. So you've also got that connection and can see why this horrible, horrible thing would be useful for the US government. So again, it's the way Unit 731 worked of taking prisoners of war and subjecting them to horrible experiments for these nefarious ends. This is the abduction of these women like Scully, who are now being subject to the same thing. It's the dark heart of, if it's not aliens, this explanation is far, far worse.
True. I mean, we do also have to speculate why does the MUFON group seem to be entirely women, and then going further back, we've got Ruby and Conduit, and Samantha. But we've got Dwayne Barry in the middle here.
I think you've got inference of men as well.
Dwayne
Barry's not the only one.
He's not the only. I think he's the only abductee man we've seen in the series.
The only one you've seen directly. There have been others referred to.
There have been others referred to. But it just means that, in terms of writing, Dwayne Barry's really an oddity in this.
Well, for your dark heart and for the glimpses you see of what happened to Scully as well, is there is the one thing that the female subjects can do that the male ones can't.
Quite. So, again, it becomes even more weird, a case of why did you take Dwayne Barry?
Or more horrible as well, when you're getting into this concept of hybridization and stuff like that. We learn a little more in 731, but...
Yeah, I think we're trying to save that as a separate one, because 731 is a can of worms, I think.
We'll get to that shortly.
We'll get to that shortly. We do have Mulder being a bit of a jerk again. In case of we have not handed in this evidence, and I provoked an international incident that doesn't go anywhere. Like, how Mulder hasn't been fired for provoking an international incident is not clear, because that should be a big deal.
Maybe it's Senator Matheson's influence.
He just smoothed it over. Mulder flips through the briefcase and has a look at the satellite photos, and he finds the list of the MUFON members. So he's like, Scully, you go and talk to the MUFON people. I'm going to go talk to the Lone Gunman. Can you not? Anyway. So he's going to see the Lone Gunman.
feel their contribution isn't so great this episode.
They feel really underused. Especially it's things like, gotta love those German optics. Oh, this came from a German spy satellite. No, it came from a Japanese spy satellite, but it's our technology. Is this detail necessary? Just tell them about the ship. That's all we care about.
I presume it's bringing back to mind what you discovered in Paperclip, the whole America using these other technologies.
Yeah, or selling them to other people, I think, rather. But yeah, we find out about the salvage vessel and the fact they're trying to recover gold bullion, which, yeah, that tracks as a cover story because these things happen. Oddly, whatever the Telepus recovered doesn't go anywhere. I know. Mulder sees something in the warehouse, which is we're meant to presume is what the Telepus recovered.
It looks like a spaceship that they pulled off the ocean floor.
Well, to be fair, it looks kind of like a blimp without the canopy at the bottom.
I think it's supposed to be a spaceship.
It's supposed to be a spaceship, yeah. It's meant to be analogous to all the other spaceships we've seen. But, yeah, so the Telepus has discovered this and pulled it up from the depths. That's cool, we're always here for that. The whole shipyard scene, though, is kind of a mess. Because this is Mulder asks for the stuff about the shipyard and then goes wandering off on his own and manages to find the Telepus. Then the armed soldiers arrived and somehow don't find him or hear him as he belly flops into the river.
I've got to think it's a flub take, but I love the fact we didn't say, no, get back up there and do the dive properly.
Yeah, do a swan dive so they don't hear you. They have guns, Mulder.
They're literally 2 feet away from him as well when he belly flops behind them. It's magnificent.
Just how there's no explanation for how they miss him because they just sort of run past and he comes up a gangway. But anyway, so that's not good. But then we've got sometime later he comes up out the ocean, wanders to the first warehouse he's next to, and peers in the window, and there's the alien ship. I understand conservative writing and everything, but wow, Molly, you've done really well with this.
I think it's kind of a shame because even though Mulder's got the action-packed half, I didn't find his little journey of discovery as engaging as Scully furthering her plotline.
I think the problem is we've seen recovered craft now. We've had it a few times because we had it as early as Deep Throat. There was certainly Fallen Angel had a recovered craft. Not so much EBE.
The one with the alien bounty hunter and the submarine?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That got into it as well.
Yeah, you've dredged UFO up. Big deal. They've been doing that for a while. And they're doing whatever weird decontamination thing they do to recovered craft. It feels like it should be more of an event, but Mulder kind of just sees it and runs away back to his apartment. Whereby Skinner tells him, oh yeah, Japan's mad with us.
It was kind of neat to have Senator Matheson back in this episode as well, because we haven't seen him for quite a while now.
No, and he's such a sporadic cast member, because we always forget he's actually an ally to Mulder, who shows up literally 3 times, isn't it?
Literally, when Mulder can't get what he wants by any other source, we wheel him out.
Well, he has said he wants nothing more to do with X, which is presumably why he's not even trying.
I've got a question for Senator Matheson, though, because last time we saw him in Little Green Men, I think.
Yes.
His office was clearly bugged and they had the encoded conversation over the bark music.
Yeah. I think the difference is, in Little Green Men, he was actually telling Mulder something useful. In this one, much like the conversation with Victor Klemper in Paperclip, Mulder's running all the details in for him. He's just basically not saying no to anything, isn't he? And I think it feels like this is a potential trap for Mulder in the future, or possibly even now, is he's so certain of what's going on that if you don't say no to him, he will take that as proof positive.
That's true. Senator Matheson isn't entirely on side with him either, because he uses that good analogy about playing chess, about how the fact that Mulder should just give them the briefcase back, essentially.
Yeah.
That this is not the fight he needs to fight right now.
Yeah, you don't want to get in the middle of an international incident, which will...
I think it was something like, the good chess player knows what to sacrifice, or something like that.
And if you're not careful, Mulder, you're going to be a pawn, and you want to be on the second rank at the very least. You don't not want to be on the front lines of these.
Yeah.
Mulder, of course, doesn't see it like that. Which, I mean, is good for Mulder's consistent character, is that he, as much as he wants to be a power player, or at least be involved in this or uncover it, he refuses to operate on the level everyone else is able to. Like, Cancer Man will sacrifice pawns, and Mulder won't do it. Mulder will throw you under the bus if he doesn't give you what you want, but he won't sort of sacrifice you to get something else, will he?
No, true.
He operates slightly differently, so it's interesting, though everyone is consistent with saying if you keep behaving like this, you're not going to get anywhere. Because the people you're up against don't have scruples, Mulder. We do have to assume that Matheson has helped him a bit, because he gets that fax of the new train car, the 82517, which is the name of the edited version of these 2 episodes, which was really catchy back in the 90s.
Mm.
So it's the new X-Files film, 82517. What? And Scully recognises Dr. Ishimaru, impossibly.
I think it's slightly off when you see that picture as well, because Ishimaru has done a great job of not aging in 40 years.
He really has.
Is you see the picture of him and the other doctors from Unit 731 back in World War II, and he looks exactly the same, I think, except for the fact he's got a bit of a grey streak through his hair.
Yeah. But we get introduced to a new character, who I didn't actually note down the guest star for, many apologies. He wasn't actually listed on the major list. It's Agent Pendrell.
Oh, yeah.
Who we know will occur in a few more episodes.
Yeah, that would be Brendan Beezer, who plays Agent Pendrell. I seem to remember he is a reoccurring character, and he's got a bit of a thing for Scully.
Yes, I think that's actually sort of first hinted in the next episode. So we'll get to that in a little while. I'm trying to do his sort of filmography next time he shows up, because he will show up again. No problem.
I can't remember how frequent he is, but I know he does reoccur a few times.
It's curious, though, that it's taken them this long to actually say, hey, that ship we found in Blessing Way, should we get someone to have a look at it? What was it? What does it do? It looks a bit like a microchip.
I guess, again, it's unfortunately because we've been focusing too much on Mulder's story that Scully's been shunted into the background a bit. And
it feels very much like catch-up now of, it's good you actually have finally got here. It's a shame that you were pushed to do this because of the MUFON meeting. I'd have thought basic curiosity would have led Scully to this, to try this ages ago. Anyway, we get some reveals about the chip, which are really eroding Mulder's worldview, because it's a man-made chip.
Japanese-made, even.
A Japanese man-made chip. And we don't learn much more about that at this point, but that's a very weird reveal. I mean, still how we tie this into Dwayne Barry as well, given he's kind of bound up with all this. We can't really shake him off. But meanwhile, Mulder is the least stealthy person in the world. How he hasn't been caught sneaking around this train yard, I don't understand.
I think we already saw that with his belly flop.
Yeah, but this one was a case of he stood right on top of a roof with binoculars, staring at them load what might be an alien-human hybrid, who looks very different to the corpse at the start of the episode, into a train car.
Wearing a kind of hazmat suit.
I don't know, it feels like how they transported the alien in EBE, or the presumed alien in EBE. That's how I'd have thought they'd just shift them around. It's really odd to put them into like a boiler suit like that.
It's different factions, though, really. Is.
I suppose so.
You previously had the Syndicate, and this time it's the Japanese.
I suppose so.
I like the idea of a secret railroad as well. I'm sure it's not the most efficient way to kind of conduct this, but it's got a cool mystique to it.
It does. I mean, there is a wild tangent on basically America's problem with the rail network and how we have way more rail than America does, despite the difference in scale.
It's quite surprising because in the UK it's a predominant way of public transportation to get everywhere, but in America, because of the size of the country, you tend to fly more.
Yes, but even then, if you don't fly, you drive. Yeah. And trains are really far down the priority list.
I know where I'm from. I grew up in an area near a nuclear power plant, and we had unmarked trains because they were used to transport things like nuclear waste. And therefore we all knew what they were, but it was kind of the unspoken secret is, if you don't write anything on the sides, maybe people won't realise you've got this illicit material in there. And that's what it kind of made me think in this episode, where you've got these carriages that even the staff on the train don't know why they're there and have no access for.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
As you said, though, horribly inefficient, when presumably they could do it other ways, but I suppose if you're trying to move secretly across the country, it's not as obvious.
No, it's actually quite canny and again, just really cool. It's got such a neat aesthetic to it.
I do like the idea. The idea is good. Mulder chases after the train. The red-haired man kills someone, and Scully has an epiphany, which is Dr. Ishikawa
Ishimaru.
Was leaning over her mid-abduction. Scully, you're going to have to factor how Dwayne Barry fits into this, and was Scully delivered to that hospital in one breath by a cadre of Japanese men or something?
I've been saying helicopter since Ascension.
I know, but Dwayne Barry didn't know where he was going, but felt compelled to go to Skyland Mountain.
I think I can tie that in better with stuff we find out in the next episode, but again, I've got to save that for 731.
Oh, that's fair. But we get a sudden appearance of X again. He's on the cast list.
Appearing to Scully, interestingly, for once.
Yeah, I mean, I feel this is entirely for drama, why X can sort of just rugby tackle Mulder at the station and say, no! It feels, come on, you lot are meant to know where Mulder is most of the time. I do like the drama, though, of appearing to Scully and saying, do not let him get on that train. They know he's coming.
Maybe he thought Mulder was more likely to listen to Scully because he evidently doesn't know Mulder that well.
Quite so. It's a good dramatic moment to end the episode on, as they know you're going to be on there. Do you have anything else for this episode?
No, I think you've covered it all quite nicely, though I must say I'm never going to complain about X appearing. He's still my favourite.
Oh, absolutely. The next episode has a great moment for X, but we'll get to that in a minute. So the second episode this week is 731, directed by Rob Bowman, written by Frank Spotnitz, and broadcast on the 1st of December 1995. The only major difference in guest stars from the previous episode is the train conductor, who is not played by Dan Castanella, as much as it kind of looks like it is Dan Castanella. He is, in fact, Michael Potenan, who is only credited as the train conductor. He's been in a number of things, but of note to us is he's going to show up in The Lone Gunman, he's going to show up in Millennium, he was in Deep Throat, he was in Sleepless, and will be in Elegy.
Yeah.
So he lives in Vancouver, basically. So would you like to give us a synopsis of 731?
I'll do my best. Quite unexpected from the way that Nisei ended, we open at a research facility. Specifically, it's a research facility for people with Hansen's disease, or leprosy as it's better known. We see a bunch of soldiers arrive to round up a group of very deformed patients. We only see them in brief, but they do look a little like the grey aliens, or hybrid, or whatever it was that we saw previously. One of the patients hides in the woods and watches as these deformed patients are all gunned down by the troops and pushed into a large open mass grave. As Mulder jumps onto the moving train, he loses contact with Scully because he drops his phone. Scully questions X about how they can help him. X tells her that all she can do is look into the chip that was removed from her neck. This will help him learn more about the train and also who killed her sister. Meanwhile, Mulder enters the train and he speaks to the conductor, getting him on side. He tries to get access to Dr. Shirozama. Inside Zama's apartment, they find a lot of handwritten journals, which are unfortunately all written in the Japanese language. Mulder leaves the conductor with an empty backup pistol to use to hold up Zama if he returns. Meanwhile, Scully returns to Agent Pendrell, who has been looking into the chip in her absence and unfortunately has broken it during his research. However, what he has discovered is the chip replicates the brain's memory function. It can potentially enable someone to know a person's every thought, and Scully hypothesizes that even perhaps it could control the person. Pendrell has found that the manufacturer of the chip was no other than Shirozama, and it is registered to a disease research facility which is in West Virginia. Mulder continues to search the train for Dr. Zama. Meanwhile, we see the red-haired man has cornered Zama into a bathroom and strangled him to death. Mulder finds the body as he doubles back through the train. Scully, in the meantime, heads to the Hansen's disease research facility which we saw in the opening sequence. She finds a group of disease patients who are hiding under the floor, including Escalante, who is the one that observed the mass killing at the start. They were hiding because they thought that Scully was one of these soldiers who had returned to kill them. Escalante tells her that people suffering from leprosy and other diseases came to that facility for treatment, but instead found themselves as experiments for Dr. Zama. He explains that the medical staff left some time ago, and then the soldiers arrived, killing anybody who could not hide from them. Escalante also shows her several large pits that are absolutely filled with corpses. Scully doesn't get a time to really look at these, unfortunately, because almost immediately afterwards a helicopter and troops arrive. Escalante is shot and Scully is captured by them. Mulder makes his way to the quarantine train car and looks through the lock section. Inside he finds what appears to be a grey alien or a similar-looking person. He's attacked by the red-haired man, causing the conductor to lock them both in the car. The red-haired man claims to be an agent of the NSA, or National Security Agency. He informs Mulder that there is a bomb on the train, which activated the moment he opened the lock car with Zama's security codes. Scully, following her abduction by the soldiers, meets with the FirstElder. He tells her that the people at the facility were part of an inhuman experiment by Zama, continuing the work of Unit 731. The FirstElder permits Scully to contact Mulder by calling the red-haired man's cell phone. Scully explains to Mulder that the alien abductions, including her own, were actually nothing to do with aliens, but instead they were conducted by Zama and other people like him. The alien abduction theory is just a smokescreen to hide their experiments on humans. Scully, on the say-so of the FirstElder, now believes that the quarantine patient, as she puts it, within the train car, is somebody who has been infected with a hemorrhagic fever. She says if the car is allowed to explode, thousands of people will potentially be infected and die of it. Mulder does kind of confirm parts of the story because he finds the bomb. It's hidden inside a ceiling vent above him. He sees that on the timer there is roughly 100 minutes left. Mulder communicates this all to the conductor and explains to him that he needs to disconnect the car from the rest of the train, but make sure it's in an unpopulated area while he does so. The red-haired man explains to Mulder that the quarantine patient is a weapon, having been given an immunity to biological warfare. Again, this ties into what Unit 731 were known to experiment on in the war, the idea being they're looking into both diseases and also radiation to create people who are immune to these effects. For, of course, military purposes. Dr. Zama had tried to sneak this unfortunate patient out of the country. However, the government would rather see it destroyed than let Japan steal the technology that Dr. Zama had produced. Mulder, of course, clings to the fact that the patient is an alien-human hybrid, despite Scully telling him the contrary. Scully tries to contact both Senator Matheson and X, but has no luck in contacting either. She watches Mulder's alien autopsy video, and doing so figures out the car's exit code by watching what Dr. Zama did when he left in the video. She repeats it back to Mulder, and Mulder opens the door out of the train, but as he does so, he's beaten unconscious by the red-haired man. As the red-haired man is about to escape himself, he is shot to death by X, who then enters the car and glances between the alien-human hybrid and Mulder. He decides to rescue Mulder, carrying him to safety just as the car explodes behind them. A week passes and Mulder finds himself unable to get any information on the train car. Scully returns the journal he found in Dr. Zama's briefcase, but Mulder flips through it and realises that it's been substituted. It's not the same writing he saw previously. Scully tells him that theirs is a fight that they can only hope to lose. The whole alien conspiracy she now believes is the government's way of trying to make amends for past atrocities. She cites apology as policy. Meanwhile, we see the real journal being translated in a shadowy room as the cigarette-smoking man watches on.
Thank you. I'll start with my favourite moment for this episode.
Oh, go on.
It's just...
I know what you're going to say.
You do, but it's still... I have to highlight it. It's just the red-haired man's phone rings. It's a case of, hello? Yes, yes. Frowny face? It's for you. That's it to Mulder. Just everyone baffled in that scene by what's going on.
I think it's a real pity he doesn't make it out the episode, because given the assassins we've seen previously, I think Kryzik's about the only one with as much personality as the red-headed man.
Yes, basically, they should have retained him. I like him a lot. Just the assassin character, and also someone who will sort of give at least a version of events if pushed into a hopeless situation. He does slowly open up to Mulder about what the cover story is or what he thinks is going on or what actually is going on, but it's all a bit vague. The ending sting is possibly the weirdest bit of, while the episode has done its level best to lay out that this is all human involved, there's no aliens involved in any of this. We're going to ignore what's in the back of the train car briefly for this.
Just how alien these deformed humans look.
Yeah, and how we can link them back to the flashback in Blessing Way, where they're making that same kind of high-pitched squealing noise when they're sort of being marshalled around the camp at the start.
You have Escalente's claim as well, where he says something like they have Hansen-like deformities.
Yeah, and they're kept separate.
But it's they don't look anything like people suffering from
They do
leprosy,
not.
so it seems a bizarre claim for somebody who has the same disease would make.
Yeah, and the whole thing was named. But my point is, though, that the ending sting is... you could have left it just at Scully saying apologies policy, but no, we've got to stick William B. Davis in there, getting someone to translate the not the journals painstakingly by hand. And so we know that whatever Scully's just said ain't what's happening, because otherwise they'd have handed over the journals and Mulder would know this biological secret thing.
I'm going to go on a tangent as well, but those journals frustrate me immensely.
I know, I know this one.
It's when Mulder first flips through them in the train, you see very briefly he flips through about 5 or 6 pages and they all have exactly the same writing on every page. So it's just such a lazy prop. It's even being unable to read Japanese, knowing how language works and they're not going to be the same sequence of words written over and over again for 6 pages.
Well, you say that, but it will turn out that basically he's found the I am Jack's journal, or all work and no play make Jack a dull boy, just in Japanese.
Yeah, just written over and over again. It's very clearly, when you, even from that brief glance, the same kanji, though, written over and over.
Oh, absolutely. Gotta wonder when X says, when X says, oh, that chip can tell you more about the conspiracy than I ever could. Because if you could give her the cliff notes really easily here, X. I'm pretty sure you know all this. You just kind of string along the episode.
But here for that chip is what I was saying when you were saying in the last episode about Dwayne Barry's involvement. Is Scully hypothesizes that these chips could be used to control people.
Oh, indeed.
So that explains Dwayne Barry's compulsion to go to that certain place.
It does. However, I'll remind you of what Pendrell says when she asks about them. Or you've seen chips like this before. Oh yeah, using control systems and video game consoles. And are you sure about?
He does cite it's more sophisticated than anything he's seen before as well.
I think it feels weird that apparently there's a single shipment of these things in the world, and they went to Shirozama, and that's it.
It's only to lead Scully, really, to that Hansen's disease research facility.
Yeah, and it feels like... I think where you can extrapolate from that is, okay, we can buy that they've apparently abducted these women, or faked alien abductions for some reason, put them onto train cars and transported them across the country. Gonna have to query a bit how the different abductees saw each other, given that there's not a lot of room in a train car, is there? And presumably they were journeying to somewhere when they were doing whatever they were doing, whatever their weird experiment was. But then we've got the chips. So the chips went to the Hansen's research place. Fair enough, that's how Shirozama got hold of them. And he put one into Scully and into all the other MUFON people.
You've got 2 assumptions of either they were taken to the facility or because that was Hammer's base, that's why they went to there.
Yeah, well, I think that's why the chips were shipped there, but I think it sounds like they abandoned the place a long time ago. But then, were those chips implanted into all the people we see get shot at the start? Or they have implants?
Unfortunately, Scully doesn't get a chance to look at them.
No.
I imagine if you went back there as well, the corpses would now be gone because they've been compromised.
Oh, she did say the pits have all been filled in and everything.
Oh, there we go.
So, yeah, chances of them getting hold of whatever was in those camps. We don't know. We do have to have a word about Scully's deferment to authority again. Because FirstElder shows up and, as far as we can tell, does not tell her who he is. Nor does she care.
I'm sticking to my theory of Arthur Deepthroat that this is Reginald FirstElder.
That's fair enough.
It's like, who told you this, Scully? Well, it's Reginald FirstElder over there.
But her comment, though, is, oh, it doesn't matter. It's a case of, okay, we can let that slide for now. And in the aftermath, Scully, who was this guy who talked to you with a Brooklyn accent? Can you tell me a little more about him?
It's a generalization, but when I watch this with you, I think the well-manicured man is very easy to believe.
Yes.
Because he's very eloquent, very refined, very soft-spoken. Whereas FirstElder looks like a mafia don.
He does. What just struck me was, I get the impression, well-manicured man was busy this week. William B. Davis could give them 15 minutes, which is why he's got a tiny cameo at the end of the episode. But FirstElder was available.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do this, and I'm pretty sure he will never do this again. He doesn't show up to talk to anyone, because he's far too busy doing whatever he's doing.
Canonically, it might have been more appropriate for it to be well-manicured as well, given that he had all the connections with Victor Klemper previously. So we're on to our next stage of this human experimentation. It would make sense for it to still be the well-manicured man.
Absolutely. And it being First Elder feels really odd. But then, again, I'm going back to... And admittedly, they did this with well-manicured man, is that at no point does anyone stop and say, sorry, who are you? What's your name? You're asking us to trust you, and you're not telling us anything. I mean, admittedly, I understand, like, Deep Throat and X being the deep cover operatives, but these are the high-ranking members of the Syndicate who are emerging from the darkness to talk to them. And the thing I think that 731 is ultimately, it's basically just forcing the series to stall for a bit. Basically, they feel that Paperclip revealed a bit too much. Now we've got to back everything back out again so we can keep the series running without revealing anything. And we've got to make Scully skeptical again.
Good how you should mention that, because I read a critique of this two-parter in particular from the time that I actually agree with a lot, is the fact that even by this point, it's clear that the conspiracy is becoming so complicated there will not be a satisfying conclusion for it.
Yes, because this is just way out there.
Which is always the worry, and you do need to make a conspiracy-based show complicated because that's how conspiracies work. But at the same time, you're getting to the point now where it's like, all right, we're almost 4 seasons in, 3.5 seasons in, and it's just how convoluted and how confusing and how much we double back on ourselves and retcon and change our minds, even by this point.
Yeah, and again, it's the whole how Dwayne Barry factors into this feels really odd, given he had 3 implants where everyone else gets 1.
That we know of.
That we know of. And I get the train as the bright place. I mean, admittedly, it's a little bit weird. And Scully's really quick to believe this, though, isn't she? So she says, I recognise this train car. It's where I was brought during my abduction. I'm pretty sure that you could also make the whole... This is kind of like the problem with hypnosis and recovered memories, is that you can't really be certain at which level you're creating them.
It's something that was deeply traumatic as well.
Yeah.
And trauma memories can't be trusted.
Exactly. So when she's shown the car, is that enough like where she was taken that she's sort of trying to transplant it on top of it and everything? I mean, she's so certain. I mean, it's probably good for her that she has answers, but this isn't something that's been hanging over her head. She's not actually been concerned about it, has she?
No.
She just said that was the thing that happened.
I think at the same time, though, that's kind of part of the plotting is Scully was concerned because you had the episode previously where she tried regression hypnosis,
Yeah.
but she was scared to look into it so far. I mean, Scully's voiced the fact that she's scared that the things Mulder believe in might be true.
Yeah. And this is
so
assurance
now
it's
you've
not.
given Scully the thing that she wants is the assurance that it's not real, it's got a scientific explanation. And so she grabs hold of it. But at the same time, it just seems so deeply unsatisfying that somebody with a scientific mind like Scully would, where she always says to Mulder is, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I need proof. Like that, literally, this random stranger who doesn't even have a name has come and told me this, and I'm just going to believe him.
And taking it on, also headed up a squad in the middle of the night who shot a very nice Hansen's disease patient who you met in the woods, taking you to a train car in a location we've no idea where that train car is, because he just takes her off somewhere, and then lets her go.
I presume you can excuse, it sounds horrible to say excuse, but the death of Escalante on the basis of what First Elder tells her about the person in the train is the fact that essentially what they're creating is Typhoid Marys.
Yeah.
Is you've got this person who's immune to horrible, deadly diseases, but carries them. So if you sell to Scully, which we don't see in the episode, and we're making assumptions for him here, as that was one of these Typhoid Marys, Scully would probably buy the culling a lot more easily.
Indeed. But the sense of it is, and I appreciate this could again be time-wise and plotting-wise, is that we don't see Scully given evidence. We just see Scully told by someone. And in that sense, she's actually no better than Mulder was in Paperclip, where Victor Klemper said, led her down a certain way and he filled in the rest himself. Is First Elder's basically done the same for her. But because hers comes to a mundane explanation, as horrible as it is, she's fastening on to that as much as Mulder will go for the fantastical one. So basically, they are kind of inverted from each other.
And this is my armchair science as well, is I don't buy the explanation about the disease carrier.
Oh, no.
Of course I'm me, so I started researching hemorrhagic fevers after this, and they're spread by bodily fluids, so if you have a bomb go off in a carriage with somebody who's got, let's say, the hantavirus or Ebola or something like that, they're going to be absolutely vaporized. The odds of this spreading in this way for a disease that isn't airborne is nil.
You've got to wonder then, did the writers know what they were doing?
It's basically Mulder would have to be pressed up against them as they exploded,
And
get a
then he
lot
died.
of this blood in his mouth, and not die from the explosion himself.
Yep.
For this to spread in any way.
So yeah, the actual threat level is weird, and the way they explain the bomb as well is we can't actually trust what the redhead man says, but what he says to Mulder isn't really believable. Because we do think he's got it slightly backwards, because it makes, as you said, it makes more sense if Shirazama wants to try and get the patient out of the country, and if he can't, he'll destroy it.
That's how I read it.
Yeah. But how the redhead man says it is a case of, he can't get out of the country, so he's going to destroy it so no one else can have it. You're still on a train car attached to a passenger train, you're going to explode. If someone goes into the locked train car where the patient
Using
is.
his specific code.
Using his specific code. And you start puzzling out and go, no, wait, what was going on?
It doesn't make any sense when, like, all the other patients we see are just shot. Why you couldn't just shoot this one in that eventuality?
Yeah. And I get to a certain point, it's got to be that we don't understand what's actually going on, but we aren't even left with enough pieces to try and put together what was meant to be happening.
I think you voiced this in the past with a couple of other episodes, that it feels like it's just one more redraft could have solved some problems here. There's a weakness in this plot, and it can be fixed if you just word it slightly differently.
Yeah, I mean, I made the offhand comment earlier today that I'm not sure Chris Carter's actually a very good showrunner ultimately, because he doesn't... There seems to be a lot of stuff that the showrunner is meant to catch and make sure it doesn't happen, or try and keep things consistent where things do get woolly, or if there's an overriding plot line, you're meant to sort of intervene and say, okay, I like that, but you've got to just shift it over to here a bit. Because I think this was like Russell T Davies in Doctor Who and everything, where their ongoing thing where the reveal of the Daleks at the end of the first season was basically he was inserting all the like bad wolf stuff into each episode. So it's that kind of control, and then you make sure things don't contradict each other. But Chris Carter didn't seem to really do that.
No, you often have a bit of a too many cooks feel in the X-Files. I know the conspiracy episodes are starting to be done by the same people like Frank Spotnitz, which should help it going forward.
Yes.
But in the early seasons, you had just whatever writer we could throw at a given time, and none of them seemed to have an idea of a longer continuity.
No, I mean, I think we made the point ages back, is that whatever Bible they have for this series, the conspiracy page is basically being filled in as they go. There's no, this is where we're building to, we're just going to see where we get to. It feels really picky because it's cute, but it's also infuriating.
Go on, what are you picking on?
So, Redhead Man gets the door entry code for the train car from Shirazama before he kills him. That makes sense. Opens it up, makes the apparently correct assumption it's not the same code to get back out again. Not quite sure why you do this, other than it's meant to be a trap, but then we get into a very weird logistical sequence there. But anyway, so there's a different code to get back out again. So he carefully does unlock the door when he goes into... We're not sure. We're not sure why Redhead Man is in that train car.
No, it is unclear, you're right.
We're gonna skate over that, though, for now. And so Mulder is interrupted by the cell phone before he can enter the same code to try and get back out, which allegedly would have exploded the car. Fair enough. Scully gets the door code off of the autopsy tape, which is kind of cute. At the same time, that was a different train.
Dr. Summer is not very good at thinking up different passwords.
He's not. I mean, the code is really bad as well, isn't it? There's a lot of ones in it. For both of them, I think.
The first code that the red-headed man uses is 1111471. The one that Scully uses, I didn't quite get all of it down because Scully keeps repeating herself a bit when she's trying to figure it out, but I think it's something to the effect of 101331. When you've got a full, I guess, 9-digit number pad, those are some pretty similar numbers in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And they don't seem to be of significant note in any way, do they? At least nothing obvious springs out. Like 1013, you pick that up all the time because that's the production company.
At least he didn't just type 731731 or something like that.
Or just, the train number, 82517. I think one of the other frustrating things about this episode, and it's clear on rewatch why it wasn't well received at the time, because you absolutely could do the nihilistic thing where Mulder is completely misguided and everything he's ever believed is wrong. You'll struggle with this because you've had Space, where we've been privy to stuff that Mulder's outside of Mulder's eye line, and definitely things like Paperclip, where we actually got to see the UFO with Mulder, and there's not a lot of explanations for what that could have possibly have been.
Fallen Angel.
Fallen Angel as well, where we got to see an invisible force moving through a forest and irradiating soldiers. Yeah. We know there's weird stuff out there. But 731 seems designed again, it comes back to the whole, I think they want to stall the series, but it seems a bit too thoroughly designed to debunk everything, because Scully's been given a barrage of answers when she talks to Mulder on the phone, like what Mulder saw in the warehouse, that's a chunk of a Russian sub. Very, very regular chunk of Russian sub there, Scully. I don't think you get many oval-shaped Russian subs, unless I'm really misunderstanding submarine design.
Just the front bit.
It's just the front. Actually, no, it's one of the blades on the towers.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's just blades. Huge one of those. But it's the level of explanations that she gives. And I don't know if there's any way of watching the episode not feeling frustrated with her. Because I think you as the audience know this can't be it. The X-Files has led you to the point where this can't possibly be it. There's been no ambiguity that you could read it both ways. You know she's wrong. But you can't actually argue against the point she's making because you've got nothing.
It was one of the major frustrations of this episode at the time it was aired, is Scully's attitude. And just, as I've said, I think I can explain it away psychologically with why Scully would want to latch onto this so easily. But at the same time, it's Scully, all you've seen over 3 years of working with Mulder, and you will just shoot down everything you've seen so fast and just believe rando stranger Reginald FirstElder here.
Exactly.
Over your long-term partner who's proven these things to you.
Yeah. But again, it feels habit-forming, because this is the thing we took Red Museum to task for, of you've just got purity control back. Those massive revelations you had in the other Mind Flask don't apply suddenly, or we can't confirm them. What are you doing?
Mm.
This is the whole build-up to the grand conspiracy and all the rest of it, but, no.
At the same time, though, I kind of like the idea of what they're proposing Zama was doing. The idea of it was either Redheaded Man or FirstElder say it is the thing that's more valuable than an A-bomb is immunity to the A-bomb. It's the believable things that you can imagine the US government doing terrible, terrible things to obtain this technology. And at the same time also believe the fact that the Japanese government, the people who had the A-bomb dropped on them, would also be interested in this technology for the idea of, the American government wanting to stop Zama from giving this information to the Japanese.
Yeah.
And things like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's the other deeply frustrating about it, is that you have a great alternate timeline, plotline going on here. But again, you've set up the series that is going to be dismissed by the viewer. Because this can't be it. This is another cover story. Or if it's not a cover story, it's only a fragment of what's going on and it's some weird diversion.
I'm going to go with it's a fragment because through who Zama is, his history, through what Unit 731 was, that there is some, if not hybridization, there's definitely some virology research going on here, which also ties into maybe purity control a bit as well. When you've got this idea of this kind of hybridization substance that they've taken from aliens.
Yeah.
That contains some kind of virus. So we are getting threads that could converge together here.
They could.
But at the same time, you've got this frustrating smoke and mirrors thing where it's not allowing them to.
Yeah, and it's also, again, I come back to that thing at the end with Cancer Man. It's just a case of, you could have left this out, and then it wouldn't feel as like the episodes were pointless, because it seems like the only model thing we seem to have actually learned, realistically, and it will depend how the other episodes go, but I think it's the only thing you can fasten on to, is Scully has a cancer risk in her future.
Potentially, yeah, if these MUFON members are right.
Yeah, that's been set up, and if they're correct, everyone's going to suffer it. Scully's in trouble.
Mm.
It's one of the frustrating things of, I love X's line of, the ship can tell you more than I ever could. But it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's a lovely sort of cold open line, but I can't do anything with this. That said, we have one of these other X's character is not what you thought it was, and how he's evolved from season 2.
Apparently Stephen Williams really liked this episode as well, because he said it actually made the audiences like X.
Yeah, it's humanized him in a way that we haven't seen before, because it's really easy to think of X as the line I keep quoting of, you got him killed, you got her killed, it's not going to happen to me.
Mm.
And now, when X is given this choice between saving possibly an alien human hybrid, we don't know, or saving Mulder, he's torn, but he chooses Mulder.
It's very different from the X we saw in, like, Softlight. The X who will trick Mulder to get what he wants for his ends. Presumably X's instruction would have been to get this valuable bit of scientific research, and he sacrifices it to save Mulder.
Indeed. It does feel like, though, that we should have had some other episodes to hint that X is changing mind like this, because wasn't Softlight was the last time we saw him, wasn't it?
It might well have been, yeah. I can't think of another time.
I can't think of another one.
No, he's appeared since Softlight. I think the last time I could think of was when Skinner beat him up, and that was part of the Blessing Way set of episodes.
Yeah. But it feels like we should have got more into how X has changed his opinions to come up like this. I did also kind of like Mulder's faith in the government spying. The fact he's made this phone call and said, drop the car off here, is that someone's going to come and rescue them, because they'll know what it is and won't risk it. And it turns out he's absolutely right. X is leaving it really close to the wire to actually go and do it. But he's correct that someone will come. Shame that Redhead Man found a scalpel.
Yeah.
In terms of drama, it really works, and I did see on Wikipedia that this episode is why Rob Bowman was picked to do Fight the Future.
Okay.
It's because of how he filmed this episode was why he was chosen to do the first feature film.
There was an interesting commentary I read reading this earlier, is I think it's R.W. Goodwin was dead against the episode because he thought it'd be impossible to film. With the restrictions of filming on train cars and things.
Yeah.
So there was a message where he went back to Frank Spotnitz and said something like, no, you've got to scrap it, we just can't do it. And Frank Spotnitz was brokenhearted. But Chris Carter just responded saying, no, just make it a two-parter.
But Chris, all the two-parters just don't work. The first half is always really strong, and the second half just falls apart.
I think it's a flaw with these ones that evidently, like this one, weren't originally written as a two-parter.
No.
Is you've got... I said the same thing with Colony and Endgame and with... Dwayne Barry and Ascension. Is you've got maybe an episode and a half's worth of plot, and you just have to stretch it out that extra 30 minutes.
And someone really needs to come in and have said, no, we need to revise part 2. It needs to be stronger.
Nisei and 731 do a bit better than some of the others because they both have exciting moments throughout. I think I don't entirely like what it's done with the conspiracy in 731, but it's not boring.
No, it's not.
It doesn't lose your attention at all.
But I think the problem we've got, and it shouldn't be as bad for these mid-season ones, because I can understand how it keeps happening for the series enders, is basically they're obviously cliffhangers, but they're purely intended for you to start watching next season. So basically you have to throw everything into part 1 without apparently ever caring what part 2 entails.
Yeah.
Because I think we've only had the Paperclip and Blessing Way so far, because Oh My Flask wasn't done like that. But it's everything that Anasazi set up, and that Blessing Way then said, we're gonna hold off on everything for an entire episode while Mulder recovers. Then we're gonna get back to it, and we're still not really gonna do much with what we set up.
Oh, not Paperclip. I like that
I
one.
do like Paperclip, but I think its Colony is you throw all the mysteries and all the setup into part 1, and they're great at doing the setups. They're not good at the payoffs.
I think you get to the payoff and realise, oh, actually, no, we can't reveal all that now.
Yeah, we can't reveal all of this yet, and so we get these weird half reveals, or we get reveals and then we retract them later in the retcon. And as a viewer, it's just kind of frustrating because you want the answers, and as much as the mystery is good, it would find it's one of the things like, famously, Twin Peaks was written with no idea of the solution of the central premise of
Who Killed Laura Palmer.
Yeah. David Lynch and Mark Frost had no idea, didn't care at all. To them it was the MacGuffin. This was just a way to get the series moving, introduce the cast, introduce the town, and let everything play out within that frame. The network, on the other hand, said, no, you've got to tell us who did it. And if you rewatch Twin Peaks ever, it's hard not to appreciate what David Lynch and Mark Foster were doing. Because up until the reveal of Laura Palmer, the series has a great mystique, and it's really enjoyable. I mean, I imagine some people were champing at the bit the entire time of who killed her. But personally, watching Twin Peaks, you just kind of succumb to the weirdness of it and all the characters and all their interactions. And this is a kind of weird thing off to the side you don't really care about, and no one seems to care about. And then they force the issue, and that makes that sequence of episodes gets really strange, doesn't it? Absolutely surreal. And the reveals are going, wait, really? And then it kind of builds up again, and then it's got cancelled. And then there's a revival, and the revival is just I don't even know how to describe the revival.
I couldn't make it to the end of the revival.
It doesn't end conclusively, let's put it that way. Probably thematically conclusively, but in terms of plot lines, case of what? Who? But anyway, I think though, if the X-Files had taken that leaf out of Twin Peaks, it wouldn't have lasted 11 seasons, for one thing. But you wouldn't have this kind of frustrations. Because you'd never be expected to give the answers. You'd only get glimpses of what the conspiracy is doing out of context, and you'd never be able to put it together, or you could start trying to put it together, but the people writing it would say, we don't know either. Unlike Chris Carter, who is really making out that, yep, I know where the conspiracy is going. It all part of my grand scheme. Even the space ghosts, especially the space ghosts.
Poor space ghost.
We haven't seen the space ghost for a while.
I'd like him to be the glue that holds the entire conspiracy together.
Oh, if only. I think at this point it would be too infamous to not to joke about. Because I think even doing this many years after the fact, when the series is basically done and dusted, if that was the ultimate reveal, I think the X-Files would have a far worse reputation. Yeah, remember that random episode from season 1? Well, it's integral to the entire plot.
It was Space Ghost all along.
And we're going to quietly forget we ever did this. I suppose one other significant thing possibly going forward, though it doesn't feel like it can be that significant given he barely shows up, is Mulder seems to have burned Matheson as a source.
It does say at the very end that Matheson won't take his calls anymore.
Yeah, he's destroyed one of his informants in a different way to I destroyed Deep Throat, but that wasn't entirely his fault. But this one is.
Interesting to see if that does play out later on, given that Matheson is used so sporadically.
Well, we know he's got one more episode, so that does seem to stick. But then,
as I said to you when we watched it, there's an episode I remember him being in that we haven't had yet, so I know we've got to get him at least one more time.
Yeah. But then Matheson's so weird, given he's referenced in the pilot, and it takes him until the start of season 2 to show up at all.
And this is now only his second physical appearance.
Yeah. He got inferred in one breath, but X won him off. I think the only other time he's ever come up, really.
No, he definitely appears at least one more time, but we'll have to see if that's the last time when we get to it.
Yeah. In terms of a conspiracy like this, it's interesting or intriguing or, kind of shocking if Mulder has burned his informant like this.
Mm.
In terms of Matheson's actual contributions to the series, I don't think you're going to miss him, Mulder. You have X. X can tell you stuff. X rescued you from an exploding train car, except he's not going to tell you that, apparently.
Without even turning around when the explosion went off.
That's because he's that cool. Cool guys don't look at explosions. You know how this works.
X is terribly cool.
X is terribly, terribly cool. Do you have anything else for this episode, or should we go for a possibly frustrating conspiracy corner?
I think it's time for me to cry openly as I try to turn this into a conspiracy corner.
Okay. So, for the first time in a while, we go to Kim's Conspiracy Corner.
Okay, I'm going to split this in half. First of all, in terms of what we have learnt about Scully's plot, unlike Mulder's half of this plot, we do get a little more here, specifically with the nature of what happened to Scully and the chip. It's unclear how far we can trust this, as a lot of Scully's information comes from Reginald FirstElder, who, unfortunately, therefore, could be lying through his teeth to her. But we have learned that there have been multiple abductees, specifically female ones it seems, who have all had a similar experience to Scully in the Bright Place. Scully even begins to remember this herself when it's described to her, but the other abductees know her all too well, although not by name, from having seen her in this place. We discover that they've all been taken a similar way, they've all received similar implants, and there is a high chance, unfortunately for Scully, that they might all succumb to sudden and deadly cancer because of their experiences. We learn that the chip removed from Scully's neck is not actually extraterrestrial in any way, it's actually Japanese made. It has something to do with memory, it has a high storage capacity and is very advanced. It's theorised throughout the episode that it could record, alter memories, and maybe even control people. Although we don't get to look into this any further, as Pendrell unfortunately destroys the very fragile chip while looking into this. We do potentially, of course, have another source of these, though, as we see that every single MUFON member has had them removed and is holding them in little vials in one scene. Tying into Scully's chip discoveries, we begin to look at the conspiracy in a different light. Whether this is true or holds any kernel of truth remains to be seen. However, we are starting to see a conspiracy that may not actually have anything to do with aliens whatsoever, and mainly may be controlled by carrying on from what we saw of Victor Klemper and the Operation Paperclip Nazi scientists, is we now have Unit 731, which was the Japanese equivalent. So these are people that have been given diplomatic immunity, even though they contributed to horrible, atrocious World War II crimes, primarily through the experimentation on people. It seems to be from what we learn about Dr. Zammer in this episode that his research is particularly into disease and immunity, so we're potentially looking at them creating hybrids that can withstand both radioactive attacks like atom bombs, but also any number of diseases. These have left the patients horrendously deformed, and the things that Zammer has done to them is truly horrible, leading to dissections and vivisections even of people. And now that they've moved on from these experiments has led to any survivors of them being rounded up and destroyed en masse and buried in shallow graves. So we have this kind of darker alternative that feels like, even though we can't be sure of how much truth is there, there may be a kernel in there. It ties into the things we've seen previously about alien hybridization, the smallpox experiments in Blessing Way and Paperclip, and even back as far as purity control that we knew had to do with some kind of alien virus in some way. It just now remains to be seen how all of these many plot threads and even contradictory plot threads are going to pull together in the next part of the conspiracy.
Thank you. Next week, of course, we have Revelations and War of the Coprophages.
They're both fun episodes from what I remember.
They're both fun episodes. Coprophages is one where I, for years, never saw the sting.
Did you not?
My uncle taped it off of Sky for us, and we basically watched it on loop a few times because it was... So it starts off with Mulder in his car at the start of the episode rather than the Exterminator stuff.
Okay.
But, for years I did wonder what this thing even was because nothing seemed to be missing from the episode. In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where you can find our Let's Play of the X-Files game, the first of the two that have been released, this one for the PSX, and primarily an FMV game.
We should also note that we have 3 levels on the Patreon at varying prices. We, of course, would like you to give us lots of money, but you can watch our Let's Play no matter what level you do subscribe at.
$3 and you get that one.
Like the price of a cup of coffee, yeah?
I feel we're turning into Futurama there. What is that, like 100 cups of coffee? That's it.
But yeah, for a cup of coffee, buy us a cup of coffee and you can watch our Let's Play. That sounds like a good deal to me. You can also get hold of me on social media. We have a Twitter and a Tumblr. The username for both is GetStrange42. We have a Facebook that you can find by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. And we're also on Mastodon at GetStrange42@universedon.com. Just if you have any questions or if you want me to promote anything that you've got going, like conventions, competitions, anything for the 30th anniversary, just give me a shout. I'll be happy to do so.
Our theme music is Envision by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next week, please remember...
Apology is policy.